The third estate contained around 27 million people, or 98% of the nation. This number included French people who did not have noble title or was not ordained in the church. The rural peasantry made up the largest portion of the third estate. Most peasants worked the land as feudal tenants or sharecroppers and were required to pay a range of taxes, tithes, and feudal dues. A much smaller section of the third estate were skilled and unskilled urban workers who lived in cities like Paris. They were poorly paid, lived in difficult conditions, and were pressured by rising food prices. Many of these were also artisans. And then at the pinnacle of the third estate were the bourgeois, successful business owners who ranged from the comfortable middle class to extremely wealthy merchants and landowners. Regardless of their property and wealth, members of the third estate were subject to inequitable taxation and were politically disregarded by the ancient regime. This exclusion could have contributed to rising revolutionary sentiments in the late 1780s. At the apex of the third estate's social hierarchy was the bourgeois, the merchant middle classes. The bourgeois were business owners and professionals who had obtained enough wealth to live comfortably. There was also there was also a diversity within their ranks. The petit bourgeois were small-scale traders, landlords, shopkeepers, and managers. The haute bourgeois were wealthy merchants and traders, colonial landholders, industrialists, bankers, and financiers, tax farmers, and trained professionals like doctors and lawyers. The bourgeois flourished during the 1700s on the back of France's economic growth, modernization, increased production, imperial expansion, and foreign trade. The haute bourgeois rose from the middle classes to become independently wealthy, well-educated, and ambitious. As their wealth increased, also did their desire for social status and political representation. Many bourgeois wanted entry into the second estate. They had enough money to acquire the costumes, trappings, and grand residence of the noble classes. However, they lacked their titles, privileges, and prestige. They often wore a surcoat. Their clothes consisted of fox fur trim, a belt, stockings, or tights, pointed shoes, long sleeves called bagpipes, and bright colors. They never really dressed as nobles due to the sumptuary laws prohibiting this prohibited absolute categorical all persons, commoners, non-nobles from assuming the title of nobility either in their style or in their clothes. Yet the wealthiest bourgeois could buy their way into nobility through venal offices, though by the 1780s this was becoming really expensive. Also, during the time of Louis XIV, since he made them waste a lot of money on clothes and like go to all these parties so they could just get a chance for like uh, to be part of the to have some power. The thwarted social and political goals of the bourgeois gave rise to considerable turmoil. The haute bourgeois had become the economic masters of the nation. Even though they had major influence, the government and policy were the exclusive domains of the royal court and its noble favorites. Many educated bourgeois challenged the foundation of monarchical power and argued the government should be representative, accountable, and based on popular sovereignty. An example of this is when Emmanuel Sieyès published What is the Third Estate in January 1789. He bonded with the bourgeois who believed they were entitled to a hand in government. What is this third estate wasn't the only expression of that idea. There were many other pamphlets and essays around the nation by the early 1789 and prior to that. When when Emmanuel spoke of the what is the third estate, he mostly um, chiefly spoke of the bourgeois instead of the peasants and the artisans and urban workers that um, weren't weren't as like yeah. But Also, the bourgeois didn't like the ancient regime did not was not really they didn't see the bourgeois politically visible. The bourgeois kind of also treated the peasants the same way. The peasants and urban workers were politically invisible to the bourgeois, just as the bourgeois itself was politically invisible to the ancient regime.